Alright, so today I have Ratigan's strategy guide. Um, he was with the tie vote with Pete, so I'm going to do him. Um, so this week I have a poll out for who I should do next, and uh, I think it'll have some other new villains on there too, because this one did, but they didn't win. So um, Ratigan is this week's. He is, in my ranking, in my opinion, he's not that difficult, but there are certain things that can make him more difficult. So first, I'm just going to go into his objective, or should I say objectives, because there are two of them, though one only uh, is showing at a time. So when you get the game, Ratigan's board is just like this, like all other boards, just like normal. But there's also this piece that flips over. There's a So it says place Ratigan's objective tile. That's this cardboard thing here. You just put it on top of his portrait, because your initial objective, just like in the movie, is to start your turn with the Robot Queen of Buckingham Palace. So there are a lot of things that make that possible. So the Buckingham Palace is here, and this is the Robot Queen. So you might be wondering, why in the world is it 15 power? That is so much. Why is this person easy? That's because there are about like 20 cards in your deck. Well, not really, I'm just exaggerating, but there are a lot of cards in your deck that actually reduce the cost of items. So Ratigan is a very item heavy deck. There are only like 5 effects. The majority of your deck is items right here, so yeah. And Robot Queen is one of them, so essentially the Robot Queen can only be played to the secret lair, and then it has to be moved all the way down to Buckingham Palace. So yeah, there's cards in your deck that reduce the cost of the Robot Queen. So right now the Robot Queen is not that big of a deal. Though there is a Fate card, Basil. When Basil is played or moved, you may discard one item from his new location. So Basil is the only card that can discard the Robot Queen. There are cards that discard items, but they have to cost 3 or less, and Robot Queen is nowhere near costing 3 or less. So Basil, if your opponent wants to win and you have the Robot Queen out, they're going to have to find Basil and then play the Basil to Robot Queen's location. That'll discard the Robot Queen, and now this is a very smart game idea, because in the normal game, he would have to, if this was just his only objective, when Robot Queen gets discarded, you would have to go back through your entire deck to find her again, get all the power, and then play her, and then move her down again, which would be incredibly hard, possibly even impossible. So they decided to make it so that, just like in the movie, spoiler alert, when Ratigan gets thwarted with the Robot Queen, his main objective is just to defeat Basil. So at this point, Basil is on your board instead of the Robot Queen. So at this point, you didn't really lose progress. You kind of just have to now focus on, instead of trying to move your Robot Queen down, having allies along with it to defeat Basil. So because Basil is 6 strength, so it's not that easy, but there's a lot of different things that can go on. So yeah, so getting the Robot Queen out is not that difficult, and moving him down can also take a little while, but with the strategy I use, it'll not be that long. And then Basil is obviously something to be afraid of. So that's his objective. Essentially just play the Robot Queen here, move it all the way down. If it gets discarded, just defeat Basil with some allies. So yeah. So his board You start with the secret lair, which is a nice spot that's safe because there's nothing up here, so it doesn't get blocked. So you get a fate somebody, you get play a card, and you get to activate. Activating things is important with this deck. There's a lot of things that activate, so that can be important. You get to play 2 cards, gain 3 power, and discard some cards at Flaversham's Toy Shop. Here at Big Ben, you get to take 2 power tokens, you get to play a card, move an item or ally, and you also get to vanquish. That's an important location because there's the only one that vanquishes. You get to fate somebody, play a card, gain a power, move an item or ally, or discard cards at Buckingham Palace. So, as you can see, these are the only 2 locations with move. So, if you want to move the Robot Queen, you're going to need to actually keep this location open so you can move her down the fastest. If you don't, that's fine too, because you can still do this, and there's also other ways to get her to Buckingham Palace. So, yeah, that's his board. So now I'm going to go into his deck. I'm going to be starting with the allies. So with allies, we have ruffians. 1 ruffians are played at a location other than Ratigans. You may perform 1 available action at their location. You cannot use ruffians to perform fate actions. So, you get 3 of them. And when they are played, you basically can perform an action at that location. So, out of all these things, you can play them to a location and use their actions. So, if you really wanted, you can play them to Buckingham Palace. If you had the Evil Queen out, or the Robot Queen, I should say, not Evil Queen. When they're here, you can use that move an item location, and then next turn you can go ahead and use it. And then you can play another Ruffians or something to move them down. And this way, it's at this location, and also the Ruffians are at her location as well. So if Basil gets played, so if you use Ruffians to move her down, you have Ruffians here, and Basil gets played to discard the Robot Queen, now you have a head start on defeating Basil because your allies are there. So now, when your gold token flips over to defeat Basil, you're already a third of the way there with Ruffians. So that's an important piece that the Ruffians can do. Other than that, they can really do anything. They can get you power. They can activate certain things. They can discard cards. But they just cannot use fate actions. Which is kind of unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Alright, next up we have Bartholomew. He's just free, and you gain a power, or you don't gain a power. He's just 1 strength. He does nothing else. Yeah, that's about it. Honestly, just some extra strength. Oh. Alright, here we have Fidget. When Fidget is played, find Flaversham and play him to Flaversham's Toy Shop. So Flaversham's Toy Shop is here. So when Fidget is played, you want to find Flaversham, and Flaversham is a hero. So that's something to keep in mind, that you would actually be fading yourself. When Flaversham is at the secret lair, cost to play the Robot Queen is reduced by 3 power. So when Fidget is played, he can be played anywhere, but you can find him, or you have to find him. So when you find him, he goes here, but if you want to, because right now he's being more of a nuisance because he's actually blocking some things, but this is why the secret lair has no things up here, because your goal is to try and get Flaversham over here so that the cost to play the Robot Queen is reduced. So the way to move Flaversham over here is by using a card called Capture. It's an effect that allows you to just move a hero with strength 3 or less to the secret lair. So, yeah, that would move him there, and now your robot queen is her cost is reduced. So that's what Fidget does. Other than that, he has 3 strength. So this is actually a really good card because you get 1 and you gain 3 strength, or you pay 1 to gain 3 strength. However, you do fate yourself essentially, though it's not considered a fate because it's the card's effect. So, lastly, we have Felicia. When Felicia is played, discard an ally in your realm or pay 2 power. So, she costs 3 and she has a strength of 6, so she's really good. So when she's played, you have to discard an ally in your realm or pay 2 power. So, you have all these allies, but I tend to actually just pay the 2 power because with Ratigan, despite Evil Queen costing 15, I tend to always have a ton of power. So that's why I do this. I always play her to the location of the Robot Queen when I get her, because if Basil gets played, she's 6 strength, which is basically enough to vanquish Basil in one shot. Well, I should be saying Basil because that's how it's pronounced in the movie, but I'll work on it. So that's the allies. Now I'm going to go into the items. Okay, so for items, out of all of these items, first we have the Robot Queen. When the Robot Queen costs 15, can only be played with a secret lair. Done and done. If the Robot Queen is discarded from your realm, flip over your objective to reveal the rat. So this alludes to says Ratigan Superior Mind up there, and then over here says Ratigan the Rat. So that's what it means. You flip this over from the Superior Mind side to the Rat side when this is discarded. So Robot Queen 15 costs, though as I go through this, you're going to start seeing a million different ways to reduce it. So Fidget's List, reveal cards from the top of your deck until you reveal an item. Put that item in your hand, discard the rest. Very simple, actually quite helpful, because next we have 5 items. 5 items that are all important. Gears. When you play an item, you may discard gears from your realm to reduce the cost of that item by 3 power. So, if you use Fidget's List, you'll be able to get gears quite often, and with 5 gears, you get 15 cost reduced, which is the cost of the Robot Queen. So if you have all 5 gears out, Robot Queen will be free to play. So that's one great way to reduce the cost of the Robot Queen. But just remember that you have to discard these when you play the Robot Queen, because each one is basically a voucher for 3 strength. And the fact that they all cost 1 shows that it's a pretty good deal. So that's what that's for. Another thing, Fidget's List can be used to find the Robot Queen, or really anything else. So Fidget's List is just a really good card to get right off the bat, because it allows you to actually find some very important cards early on, which helps you complete your objective early. So tools, the cost to play items is reduced by 1 power. Very simple. Essentially, when you play this, again, items are reduced by a power. So if you don't have all the gears, this could also reduce the cost. But it reduces cost of all items, as well as making this it doesn't leave when you play an item. So if you play this first, all of your gears become free, because your gears cost 1 power to start, and then when you play them, because of tools, your gears will completely free up. So yeah, that's another important thing, is get the tools out early. Probably, I would say, get Fidget's List. Um, use Fidget's List. Hopefully, find the tools, play the tools, and then get all the gears and make them and play them all for free. So, Royal Robes is an item. Is gain 2 power. So, I wouldn't play this unless you had intention on using it twice. Because if you don't use it twice, you pay 2 and then you gain 2. You don't really get anything out of it. Like, you could just discard it and do the same thing. So, the only time I would play this is if I intend on using it twice. But that's just me, so that's what I do with that. Next up, Marvelous Trap. You get 2 of these. Probably the most confusing card. So Marvelous Trap, you pay 1 power to activate, and before Ratigan moves on your next turn, defeat all heroes at this location, and then discard Marvelous Trap. So, essentially, they cost 3 because they defeat anybody. So Marvelous Trap is essentially, you activate it, you can play it, but you don't have to activate it yet, but you activate it with 1 power on your turn, and then your opponent has a turn, but you activate it at a location that has a hero. So if I had Basil here, let's just say that, what I would do with the Marvelous Trap is I would go here, activate this for a power, and then my opponent would have a turn, where they can try and do something to move Basil out of the way. If they don't move him out of the way, Marvelous Trap triggers at the start of my turn before I move. So when my opponent or opponents are done with their turn, it becomes my turn again. This goes off, vanquishing Basil, and then this gets discarded. When it vanquishes Basil, I would win the game. But if it's any other hero, that's essentially what it does. So it's like a multi-turn card, which can be confusing to think of or think about. So, you have to kind of plan a turn in advance with that one. But it's also really good when you can pull it off correctly. So, next up we have Belle. Simply just take Felicia from your deck or discard pile and put her into your hand and shuffle the deck. So, it's an activate again. So, when you do this, you just are able to grab Felicia from the deck. It's not that difficult. But yeah, so this is a really good one if you need some extra strength. So when I get it, I play it because you never know when it can come in handy. Alright. Next up we have 2 uniforms. They're just your basic just strength boosters for allies. When a uniform is played, attach it to an ally. That ally gains 2 strength, and then you may immediately perform a vanquish action using that ally. So this is really good because if you need to defeat Basil but you don't have enough strength, you just attach a uniform to one of your allies at that location, and then if all you needed was 2 strength, you can vanquish Basil. So this allows you to just play a card as well as vanquish in the same turn without having to be at the vanquish location. So if I had 4 strength at this location here, let's say I just had 2 ruffians. Right, 2 ruffians, 2 strength, and I needed to defeat Basil here. I can play a uniform onto one of the ruffians, which goes now, instead of 4, it's 2, 4, 6, and because of this, I can also vanquish the same turn. So if I was here, here, or here, I can all do that. Alright, and the last item is Airship. You activate it for 1 power, and then you move Airship and 1 ally or unattached item at its location to another location. So this one is just incredibly, I don't know if it's supposed to be overpowered or if it's just supposed to be something that's supposed to be, but I essentially use the airship as a way to move the robot queen from where you played her all the way to Buckingham Palace in one go. That's because the robot queen is an unattached item, and you can move it to any location. So essentially what I do is I play the robot queen in the secret lair, or I play the airship first, and then I play the robot queen on top of the airship, and then I fly them all down to here, where now I'm at the winning condition, and my opponent has to fate me and hope that in the 2 cards they draw, they don't get Basil. So this is just a really simple way to move her down, which is why she's kind of easy, because you can basically reduce her cost to being free, and then you can essentially just move her down. So there's at some points you don't even have to save up power, and you don't even have to move her down. So it's kind of just like a easy objective to complete. So that's why I do this. So also it can move an ally. So if you're at the point where Ratigan is defeating Basil, you could also use it to move an ally from some other location to the location where Basil is to stack up some power. So it has many uses. Alright, that was all the items. Now we have effects. So the first effect is capture. Capture is very simple. I said before, just move a hero with a strength of 3 or less to the secret lair. Quite simple. You get 3 of these. This is so they don't block any of your what are they called? Any of your actions. So without them blocking your actions, you can basically do other stuff as if they weren't there. So Greatest Criminal Mind, essentially just either draw 2 cards or gain 2 power. I tend to always draw 2 cards because the cards are way better than 2 power. I can always go to a location and gain 3 power or gain 2 power. I don't have to play a card to get it. Though, if you have all the cards you ever want and you need power, obviously, just play this to gain power. So, very simple. So that was all of the items and effects. So now we have our 2 sets of conditions. The first set I'm going to go into is extravagant. During their turn, if another player gains 3 or more power, you may play extravagant, choose an item from your discard pile and put it in your hand. So with extravagant, if your opponent gains more power, you can play it. So mostly every single opponent except for Gaston has a location where you can play where you gain 3 power at a location. So at that point, with Gaston, I'd probably discard this because you'd have to wait for him to play a certain card to gain power, which could be more of a pain. Although this allows you to get certain items out of your discard pile. Now, this does not work with the Robot Queen. Well, it does, but there's really no point because when Robot Queen gets discarded, the token gets flipped over. And if you get the Robot Queen back and then play the Robot Queen again, you're still on the rat side, so it doesn't flip back over for you. So essentially, extravagant, if you're going to use it, don't get the Robot Queen out of the discard pile if that's where she is, because you're basically wasting the card, because Robot Queen can't be played again. So once she's discarded, she's gone. Don't even think about her again. That's what I would do. Next up, we have Devious. During their turn, if another player targets you with a Fate action, you may play Devious. That player reveals only 1 card from your Fate deck instead of 2. This card is annoying if you're not playing as Ratigan, but you're playing against Ratigan, because this only works when you're being fated. So when you're being fated, obviously, you play this before they draw, and then they can only draw 1 card. So if you have the Robot Queen at the location, you can just, and you have this in your hand, basically they have to fate you, otherwise you win, and then with Devious you basically make them draw one card, so it's a 1 in 15 chance, or depending on however or what cards were drawn earlier in the game, to actually be able to get all the cards, or get the card they need, like Basil. So yeah, so that's essentially the deck. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to go into the Fate deck. So the Fate deck is actually mostly heroes. There's a good reason for that. Ratigan has a ton of he's got a lot of stuff that he can do, so he needs a lot of stuff that can stop him. So obviously the first one is Basil. We've pretty much gone over this, but yeah, it can discard an item from his new location. So Robot Queen will most likely be discarded. If not, I don't think it wouldn't be smart of them to play him, because you can just not vanquish him and then your Robot Queen is safe. So if you don't have Robot Queen out and your opponent plays Basil, you basically have locked in a victory, as long as your opponent isn't close to winning as well. And this occurs because you can just not defeat Basil, and then you can just move the Robot Queen to the Buckingham Palace and be totally fine when you play her. So, yeah, if your opponent was smart, they wouldn't play Basil, because until there's a Robot Queen out, because if they drop before the Robot Queen is out, they can essentially just discard it and then try and go through the Fate deck again. So that's what they would do. So Flaversham, pretty much gone over this one as well. If he's at the secret lair, cost to play the Robot Queen is reduced by 3 power. Quite simple. Just try and capture him. So he moves to the lair, and then now the cost to play Robot Queen is reduced. Next up we have Dawson. Dawson gets 2 strength if Basil's in Ratigan's realm. So yeah, if Basil's here as well, he just gets 4. Not that big of a deal. Other than that, he can be captured. So Olivia, when Olivia is defeated, choose an opponent. That opponent reveals and plays the top card of your Fate deck. So this one's kind of bad, because if you vanquish Olivia, I mean, she's only 1 strength, now you have to choose an opponent to play the top card of your Fate deck. Or the opponent, yeah, that you choose. So I tend to capture her. I don't really vanquish her, because I don't want to get fated again. Because if I get fated again, I can end up getting Basil or something that discards my queen. So the Mouse Queen, Ratigan cannot win with the Robot Queen at Buckingham Palace. Quite simple. She can be played anywhere. She can't be captured, so you're going to have to vanquish Mouse Queen. She's basically another way to stop the Robot Queen from winning. So, yeah, but this one doesn't discard the Robot Queen. So, if they play Mouse Queen, you just vanquish the Mouse Queen and then hopefully get Robot Queen to her location. So Toby, when Toby is played, you may move a hero to any location. This is the card that they pretty much want when you set a Marvelous Trap. When you set a trap to defeat somebody, Toby can move a hero away from the trap so that they're safe. So that's what Toby is. He's 6 strength. Yeah, that's about it. The reason why the dogs and the cats are so strong is because you're playing as a rat and your opponents are basically mice. So cats and dogs are much bigger, so they're much stronger to them. So that's just some fun facts to think about. Miss Judson, when Miss Judson is played, Ratigan loses up to 2 power. Not that big of a deal, really. Losing 2 power is fine because you can just make it back anyway. And your last three are Queen's Guards. Queen's Guards can only be played at Buckingham Palace, and they don't cost, but they have 3 strength each. So, yeah, that's also pretty good. So, yeah, those are all like the heroes in the deck. They're not that bad when you think about them, but some of them can actually mess you up pretty bad. But with the way Ratigan's deck is, it really isn't that big of a deal with any of those. Next up we have Sabotage. Discard an item with a cost of 3 or less from a location in Ratigan's realm that has a hero. So this is what I was talking about earlier when you have items that are cheaper. They basically can be discarded as long as there's a hero at that location. So if you have like Fidget's List or anything that like stays there, like tools that reduce the cost or allow you to find items, this would probably be the thing they use to discard that. But it's got to make sure that there's a hero at that location, otherwise they can't play it. So the best way to avoid having an issue with your items getting discarded is to defeat any hero that's at a location with an item, number one, but sometimes playing all those heroes can be a bit of a pain. Next up we have Call for Help. If Basil's in Ratigan's realm, you may move him to any location, otherwise find Basil and play him to any location. So this is a card that allows your opponent to find Basil, essentially. As well as if you're setting a Marvelous Trap to vanquish Basil, or you're just stacking up strength on Basil's location. This basically allows them to move Basil. So, yeah, he moves out of the way of all your allies, or he moves out of the way of the trap. Or, if he's not on the board and you have the Robot Queen, this will be a card that they really want to get, because this allows them to find Basil and play him. So there's 2 of those, so you really got to keep that in mind, because if those haven't been drawn yet, and neither is Basil, Call for Help could be the next thing that gets drawn. So you just got to be prepared for it. Makeshift Balloon. A makeshift balloon is played attached to a hero. That hero gains 2 strength, and then you may immediately move that hero to a new location. This is great if it's played on Basil, assuming you're playing against Ratigan, but if you are Ratigan, this is terrible if it's placed on Basil, because now he moves out of the way of your allies or your Marvelous Trap, and he also just gained 2 strengths, and now you have to use 6 strength to vanquish him. So it's the main Fate deck. So now my strategy for Ratigan is quite simple. It really is just gain power is like number 1, because Robot Queen costs 15, but there's quite a few different things you can play to save up for the Robot Queen or make the Robot Queen cheaper. So what I like to do is hopefully get this starting, because if I get that starting off, that can really help me get more cards in my deck, or in my hand, that I might need. So that's always a nice one. So yeah, essentially with my main objective here is to try and get those 2 out on the board as soon as possible, because those allow me to find all the items and also reduce their costs, because when you have 5 gears in your deck, they're quite easy to come by, but finding that last one can be a little bit of a pain, so this one can be helpful for just discarding everything that's not an item and getting it out of there. So yeah, these are incredibly important. Whenever you get a gear, play it. No question, even if it's not free because you don't have this out yet, still play it, because being able to reduce the cost of items is incredibly important, and you can't just like sit on this, because gears, there's a lot of them, so if you just hold on to them, you're not going to be able to search through your deck nearly as fast. So essentially, with my objective, with my strategy, you're trying to search through your deck as quickly as possible, trying to get through it, so you can find all of your items, and you can also just try and get everything out there as quickly as possible. So essentially, you want to get all these out. You want to get these, because you want to reduce Robot Queen. You can basically play Prince John if you really wanted to, and completely skip playing all this. But what's the point? Because when you're searching through your deck so quickly, you can find all of these quite quickly, as well as get that. So, yeah. Right off the bat, you're burning through your deck, going to discard locations, like here and here, because you kind of need all of the cards that they're giving you, assuming that they're not like these right now. So, yeah, get all your gears, get your tools and list, and get your Robot Queen, because that makes playing her so much easier once she's played. This is where, if you get the airship, either hold on to it or play it at her location, because airship is basically a one and done. Instead of having to spend a few turns moving her down, you can straight up just play this, activate it, and now she's at that location. You have to start your turn. So doing that is just incredibly fast, and if you start with Robot Queen and some gears in your hand, it can take only a few turns to get her out, and then just another one or two to move her to Buckingham Palace, depending on how quickly you can find the airship. So that's why Ratigan's quite easy to me. He's not terribly difficult, but yeah, there's quite a few things that you can do to make this one easier. So yeah, airship the Robot Queen. So first off the bat, get the stuff that reduces items or finds items, and then get these. Play them together. I would normally play them together, or play the airship first, or play this first. If you have to play, what I would do first is actually play Robot Queen, because they would most likely not fate you to discard the Robot Queen at this location, because she's so far away. Why would they even try and do that to you? Because it can honestly take you longer to move Robot Queen down than play Basil, discard it, and then just play a few allies and vanquish him. So essentially, play the Robot Queen first, and then play this on top, and then move. Because if you do this second, or if you do this first, let's say you did that, they could get sabotage to get rid of it. I'm assuming there's a hero here, but yeah. So you gotta kind of think that this, you have to protect this with your life, essentially, because it's really the thing that can actually make this game much easier for you. So you got to make sure that you have them both, and then play Robot Queen first. And so, in the event that your Robot Queen was discarded, you flip over to the rat. You have to find a way to vanquish Basil. Now, this isn't that bad, because you have quite a few allies that fight quite hard for you. So you have your ruffians, like these. Now, if your Robot Queen was discarded from this location, you can see there's a vanquish action here. So if you actually had 2 ruffians there already, you play your third one to have 6 strength, and then you can vanquish Basil without having to use this location. So you can be anywhere, play the third ruffian and vanquish. There's also Felicia, who gets rid of him in one shot. She's also a really good card to use. That's where I would use the bell. Because if you get the bell, play it, because it can always come in handy. He's activated to get Felicia and then play her. Discard 2 power, do whatever. And then essentially, either on the same turn, you can vanquish, because no matter where Basil is, you could always just get the power or play a card and then vanquish. So, really, if Basil discards your Robot Queen and you have the bell, game can be over in a turn. Depending on how much power you have. Yeah. So, or I shouldn't say be done in a turn, but it can be done rather quickly. So, yeah, basically, have the bell out in the event that Basil gets played, because if you're searching for other cards, you would discard Felicia, because she would be expensive when you're searching for certain things. So if you have the bell out, there's really no reason to play her, especially because you're going to be moving an item down, not allies. Now, yeah, you got to keep in mind that this can be discarded as well. So, yeah, so you got to just keep that in mind. Really know what you're trying to do and know what your opponent is trying to do. So that's essentially my strategy, is save up power, play all of your items that reduce the cost of other items. Then when that's done, use the airship to move the Robot Queen down to here, end your turn. Hope that your opponent doesn't draw anything that does something to you. If they do, defeat Basil with either Felicia or some ruffians or any of your other allies. And then you win. So Ratigan can be slow if you don't burn through your deck as quickly as I'm saying you should. But if you do it right, he can be really quick, to the point where if you're playing against certain people like Hades or Scar might not even have Mufasa out by the time you win. Hades might not even have one Titan at the Mount Olympus when you win. So Ratigan can be real quick, but it's all about knowing what to do and how to play his cards right. So yeah, that's my strategy guide for Ratigan. I hoped you all found something out of this to be helpful, or just watched it for entertainment, or to see if my strategy was the same as yours. Yeah, thank you all for watching. There's going to be a new poll up by the time this is uploaded. It'll probably be up and probably almost over, depending on how long it takes me to edit this. So yeah, there's that. Join my subreddit. That's where the polls are. Also, join the Disney Villainous subreddit. That's not mine, but it's yeah. So join that. Those are both in the description. Leave a comment if you have any questions about this strategy, or if you have if you need any more clarification. I can go ahead and answer those questions for you down below. Yeah. Thank you all for watching.